Nothing stings quite like the ending of a love story that felt like it was just beginning. The Buccaneers season 2 doesn't hold back, it pulls the rug out from under its characters and its audience. What starts as a story about freedom and rebellion ends in a quiet storm of heartbreak, power plays, and bold choices. But was it really an ending, or just the beginning of something even bigger? Asterisk now, let's rewind and break it down. Asterisk season 2 of the Buccaneers throws us back into the glittering world of New York girls taking on the stiff, rule-heavy society of Victorian England. But this time, the stakes are higher. It's no longer about being noticed or marrying well, it's about survival. Emotional, social, and romantic survival. Asterisk non-St. George, who once seemed unsure of where she fit in, is now caught between two lives and two loves. On one side, there's Guy Charming, radical, and emotionally available. On the other, there's Theo royalty, safety, and structure. But by season 2, it's clear Non isn't just choosing between men, she's choosing between the person society wants her to be and the woman she's becoming. Asterisk the season opens with tension already simmering. The bonds between the girls Jinny, Lizzie, Conchita, Mabel, and Non are still strong, but cracks are showing. They've all changed since they first arrived in England. Each of them is learning that being bold and modern in a world built on old rules comes at a price. Especially for Jinny, whose struggle with her unhappy marriage takes a dark, emotional turn. Her story this season is about pain, hidden pain, and the pressure to pretend everything is fine when it clearly is and single quotes t. Asterisk meanwhile, Conchita has gone from party girl to mother, navigating life with a husband who keeps disappearing physically and emotionally. Mabel is still fighting for respect in a society that sees her as too much, too opinionated, too different. Lizzie, once so wide-eyed, is now skeptical and guarded, clearly affected by everything they've all been through. Asterisk, but the heart of the story remains with Non. Her world is shifting fast. She finds herself questioning everything: her relationships, her family, her place in society. There's an undercurrent running through season 2. Who gets to have freedom? Who gets to write their own story? Asterisk romance isn't sweet and simple here. It's complicated. Theo may love Non, but his love comes with expectations, with control. Guy, on the other hand, seems to see her for who she truly is, but even he isn't perfect. He challenges her, yes, but sometimes love that feels too right too quickly can be just as dangerous. Asterisk as the episodes unfold, we see more betrayal, more secrets, and more shifting loyalties. There's a growing feeling that nothing is stable anymore, not love, not friendship, not family. It's a slow unraveling, and by the time the finale approaches, we know someone is going to break. Asterisk, but even with all the drama and the heartbreak, season 2 is also about growth. The girls are no longer just wealthy Americans playing dress up in British society. They're women who are seeing the cracks in the system and trying to find a way through it without losing themselves. Asterisk each character arc feels sharper this time, more painful, more real. And as viewers, we're not just watching. We're feeling every twist with them. By the time we reach the final episode, the question isn't just what will Non do, it's who will she become? Asterisk, and that's exactly what makes the ending hit so hard. Asterisk the final episode of the Buccaneers season 2 starts quietly. Almost too quietly, but that's the trick, it wants you to believe things might still end neatly. Of course, they don't. Asterisk we open with Non standing at a crossroads both literally and emotionally. The air is tense, and the choices she's avoided all season are now staring her in the face. On one side, she's being pulled by Theo's world, a life of comfort, power, and protection. On the other, there's Guy, who represents something more uncertain but undeniably more real. Asterisk, but before we even get to her decision, we see how all the girls are reaching breaking points. Asterisk, let's start with Jinny. Her storyline has quietly built up over the season, and in the finale, it explodes. The truth about her unhappy marriage is no longer something she can hide. There's a chilling scene where she finally admits, perhaps not out loud, but in the way she moves, the way she breathes, that she's done pretending. The subtle acting, the lighting, the silence around her, it all makes her pain feel incredibly real. She may not shout or scream, but her decision to walk away from that life is louder than anything she could have said. Conchita, meanwhile, is still struggling with her identity as a mother, a wife, and a woman who once lived boldly. She watches as the world tries to dull her sparkle, and in this finale, she seems to wake up again. There's a brilliant moment between her and Nan where you realize that their friendship has become a lifeline. They've both changed, but they still see each other, and that matters. Mabel's final moments in the episode are less dramatic, but still powerful. She's spent this season trying to prove herself, trying to be taken seriously by people who never intended to give her a voice. In the finale, we see her choose herself for once. She stops asking for permission to be heard. It's not flashy, but it's strong, and that's the kind of growth this show does well when it slows down. Now, back to Nan. The heart of the finale belongs to her. The entire season has been building toward a choice. Will she marry Theo and become the Duchess, stepping into a life of rules and expectations? Or will she risk everything for the possibility of something true with Guy, she stands in front of? A mirror symbolic, of course dressed like the perfect lady. But you can see it in her eyes. She's not sure she can keep pretending. Then comes the scene. Nan walks through the grand hall of Theo's estate. Every step echoes. She's meant to meet Theo, to accept the future he's laid out for her, but instead, she veers off course. She's chasing something else, or maybe just running away from what she knows she doesn't want. When she finally finds Guy, it's not a sweeping romantic reunion. It's messy, honest. They argue. He's angry. She's torn. And in that moment, you realize that this show isn't selling us fairy tales. It's showing us what real, painful love looks like, where timing matters and wounds don't heal just because someone says I love you. Nan doesn't get a neat ending. She doesn't run into Guy's arms. In fact, it's unclear what she's choosing. What we get instead is a pause, of breath before the next chapter. A final shot of her standing between two doors, both literally and symbolically. One door leads back to safety, the other into the unknown. That's when the screen fades, not to black, but to light. And then. Dramatic music. No words. Just a moment that lingers long after the credits roll. It's the kind of ending that frustrates some viewers. There's no big romantic gesture. No final kiss. But that's the point. The Buccaneers isn't about the happy ending. It's about the hard choices women have to make when they're given just enough freedom to realize how little they actually have. The finale gives us closure in pieces. Not everything is tied up, but you can feel the change. Each girl has taken one small step toward owning her story. It's not much, but it's enough to keep us hooked and desperate to see what season 3 will bring. And if you thought this was just a costume drama, the finale proves otherwise. It's a revolution in disguise. On the surface, the Buccaneers may look like a series about pretty dresses, posh houses, and romantic dilemmas. But dig deeper, especially into the finale, and you'll see how rich it is with symbolism and subtle storytelling. Every glance, every costume, every pause in dialogue, it's all doing something. And when you pay attention to those details, the ending becomes even more powerful. Let's start with Nan, because she is the core of this story. In the finale, she's visually stuck between two worlds. That's not just a plot point, it's reflected in her clothes, her posture, and even the lighting. When she's with Theo, the lighting is always soft, cool-toned, and even sterile. It's elegant, controlled, and distant, like a portrait in a museum. When she's around Guy, everything feels warmer, more chaotic. and emotionally charged. It's not perfect, but it's alive. Non's wardrobe in the finale also tells us something important. The final dress she wears, the one designed for her to say yes to Theo, is structured and royal, a perfect Duchess in training look. But if you look closely, it's almost like she's wearing armor. It's stiff, restricting. It's beautiful, yes, but it's also a costume. It's who she's expected to be, and Non has spent 2 full seasons pretending. That dress is the final test. Can she live in someone else's version of her life? Then there's the mirror scene, brief but layered. Non stares at herself, not in awe, but in confusion. That's a symbolic moment. Mirrors often represent self-knowledge, but here, she doesn't seem to recognize the person looking back at her. That's what makes her decision so important. It's not just about which men she chooses. It's about whether she chooses herself. Now let's talk about Guy and Theo, the 2 men caught in Non's emotional orbit. Theo represents tradition, class, and safety, but he also symbolizes control. Every moment he shares with Non is measured, polite, even romantic, but it's always under the weight of what's appropriate. Theo isn't evil, he truly cares for her, but his version of love has conditions. It comes with a future already written. In the finale, his frustration starts to crack through the charm. And in that shift, we see the truth. He loves Non as long as she stays within his world. If she steps out of it, the love wobbles. Guy, on the other hand, is passion, rebellion, and risk. He challenges Non, sees her intelligence, and pushes her to think beyond the boxes society wants to trap her in. But even Guy has limits. In the finale, when Non comes to him, unsure and conflicted, he doesn't greet her with open arms. He's hurt. He's tired. That scene between them isn't romantic in the traditional sense, it's raw. It shows that even the right love comes with hard truths. Real connection isn't always easy. Sometimes it's painful. This emotional honesty is what sets the Buccaneers apart. It doesn't make one man the villain and the other a hero. It shows how both can be flawed and how love, especially for a woman like Non, is never simple. That's the real conflict here. Freedom versus fantasy. And we can't forget the symbolism of the house. The large estate, with its endless hallways and perfectly lit rooms, becomes a metaphor for the life Non would have if she stays with Theo. Every room is beautiful, but also empty. It feels more like a stage set than a home. Compare that to the scenes in the outside world, forests, gardens, the city. Those moments are messy, but they're filled with energy. The message is clear. Safety can be stifling, and risk can be freeing. Let's shift to the other women now, because each of them gets a quiet moment in the finale that speaks volumes. Jinny's silence is its own language. She doesn't scream or have a dramatic monologue. Instead, her power comes in stillness. Her eyes carry years of pain and disappointment, and when she finally walks away from her husband, it's not about rebellion, it's about survival. That moment isn't flashy, but it's symbolic of how many women in her position had to reclaim their lives quietly, without fanfare. Conchita's reawakening is symbolized through light and space. In earlier scenes, she's framed in small, crowded rooms. But in the finale, she's finally filmed in open, airy spaces. She's breathing again. Her decision to put herself and her child first is a subtle but strong declaration of independence. Mabel's character arc shows how transformation doesn't always need a spotlight. She doesn't escape to romance or run away from society. She stays, she speaks, and she refuses to shrink. In a way, she represents the intellectual rebellion of the group, the quiet fight to be taken seriously when the world refuses to listen. Even the final silence after the last line is spoken, when the screen fades and the music doesn't swell, is a statement. Most period dramas end with a kiss, a wedding, or at least some closure, but the Buccaneers ends with a breath. It asks the audience to sit in that space, to feel what the characters are feeling, uncertain, afraid, but finally awake. Asterisk olive. These choices, the visuals, the writing, the costumes, the music, the acting aren't just for beauty. They're communicating something powerful. That freedom doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Sometimes it looks like not knowing what's next. Asterisk, but whatever season 3 brings, it's clear that these women are done pretending. Asterisk, as the screen faded to white in the season 2 finale, one thing became crystal clear. The Buccaneers didn't give us all the answers on purpose. This wasn't a neat ending, it was a transition, a setup, a challenge to the audience. What happens next when a woman dares to stop playing by the rules? Asterisk, let's start with the biggest unanswered question. What exactly did Non choose? Asterisk, that final moment Non standing between two symbolic futures is powerful because it's unfinished. She doesn't say yes to Theo. She doesn't run into Guy's arms. She doesn't even speak. All we get is her presence, her breath, her eyes full of doubt and fire. The writers want us to sit in that tension. She may not have made a final decision yet, and that's okay. The real transformation is that she knows she doesn't have to choose just because society expects it. Asterisk, but fans are still asking, will she walk back into the ballroom and marry Theo? Will she finally admit her love for Guy, or will season 3 take a more radical turn on choosing herself, not as a rejection of love, but as a deeper act of self-worth? Asterisk, here's another thread that season 2 left dangling, Non's family background. While we know she's not the St. George blood daughter, there are still secrets tied to her past. The finale teased some quiet conversations between older characters, suggesting there's more to Non's origin and possibly her future than we've seen. If season 3 picks this up, it could shake her entire identity. What if her lineage gives her unexpected power or status? Or maybe it becomes the reason others try to silence her. Asterisk, and then there's Theo. We left him looking hurt, confused, maybe even angry. He's not used to being told no, so what happens now? Does he become bitter and try to win Non back out of pride? Or does he let her go and maybe reveal a darker, more possessive side? There's a real possibility that season 3 might show us what happens when privilege is denied. Theo might not remain the quiet gentleman if he feels humiliated. Asterisk, Guy, too, remains in a kind of emotional limbo. His reaction to Non's approach in the finale wasn't fully hopeful. He seemed guarded, like he didn't want to be hurt again, and that's fair. If season 3 brings them together, their love won't be smooth sailing. They'll have to rebuild trust, and given how bold Guy is in his beliefs, there's always the chance his political ideals might clash with Non's reality in unexpected ways. Will their love survive the real world, or will it stay just out of reach? Asterisk, but the finale wasn't just about Non. Let's talk about the other women because their stories are far from over. Asterisk, Jinny, having finally left her abusive marriage, is stepping into uncharted territory. Will she be embraced or rejected by society? Divorced women weren't exactly welcomed with open arms during that era. She may face judgment, isolation, even poverty. But she might also find strength she didn't know she had. Could season 3 be her rebirth? Asterisk, Conchita, too, has some big decisions ahead. Her husband's constant absence has pushed her to the edge. And while she didn't explicitly say she was leaving him in the finale, the look in her eyes said enough. She may start rebuilding her life from the ground up, maybe even falling in love again, or returning to the independent spirit we saw in season 1. There's also the question of motherhood. How does she raise her child in a society that wants her to be quiet and obedient? Asterisk, Mabel, perhaps the most intellectually independent of the group, could become a political force in season 3. She's outspoken, self-aware, and unafraid to speak truth to power. With the growing tension between the old guard and the new ideas of the younger generation, Mabel could step into a larger spotlight, maybe even leading a social movement. A theory gaining traction online suggests She might even become a published writer voicing the untold stories of women like her. Asterisk, and what about Lizzie? Though she played a quieter role in season 2, she's been watching everything unfold. Some fans believe she could emerge as a dark horse in season 3, a woman who surprises everyone by making bold moves when least expected. There's still so much we don't know about her motivations, and that makes her one to watch. Asterisk, now for the big question. What could season 3 actually be about? Asterisk, if we follow the emotional arcs, season 3 may not be about finding love, it might be about what happens after you stop chasing approval. That's where real freedom begins. We might see the girls carving out new identities, pushing against the class structure, or even moving out of England entirely. There's a theory that at least one of them, possibly Mabel or Non, could return to America, not as a failure, but as someone ready to start a new chapter on her own terms. Asterisk, we also can't ignore the political shift hinted at in season 2. Women's roles in society are under quiet attack, and the characters are becoming more aware of their lack of power. If season 3 leans into this, it could become a period drama with revolutionary fire addressing class division, gender inequality, and the personal cost of rebellion. Think less about dances and more about debates. Less romance, more revolution. Asterisk, lastly, there's the theory about a time jump. It's possible season 3 may open months or even years later. We could meet the characters again in entirely new circumstances. Non, now a published writer, Jinny, running her own household. Guy, organizing protests. Theo, married, but not to Non. A time jump would also allow the show to explore how change truly happens not overnight, but in the quiet choices made over time. Asterisk, in the end, season 2 didn't give us closure. It gave us questions, but they're the right questions. The kind that stir debate, open doors, and push us to ask not just what these women will do, but what we would do in their place. Asterisk, and that's what makes the Buccaneers more than just another costume drama. It's a mirror, one that reflects not only the past, but the battles women are still fighting today. Asterisk.